What up, what up, what up, what up? It's me, L Teddy 27.
Good as night, right about the hood.
Oh, dear God.
I'm already eating the drink. Look a damn mess, just a damn mess. No means no, and yes means no.
What up, 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 what up? What's good, people? What's up? It's me, I'm L Teddy 27, and I am back, and we are here for another review. The long, much awaited review of Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 8. It is entitled Jigabobo. It's so much to cover on this, so much to do, so little time, but we'll get it done. All right, we start right off, Emmett Till's funeral. We know Bobo is dead. Emmett Till is dead. They're outside. You see Ruby, you see Montrose, you see Letty, you see Dee, you see Tick. They are all walking with these thousands of people that are going to see Emmett Till's body. Shouts out to Robert's Temple, Church of God in Christ, Kojic. Can I tell y'all how Kojic is the backdrop for a lot of big moments in the civil rights era? Shouts out to Church of God in Christ, all my fellow Kojic members. Anyway, we see immediately in the crowd, you have Christian religious leaders, you have Muslim religious leaders. They're both talking in different, contexts about what to do, how to move forward, how to get these civil rights and equal rights for Black people. So what ends up happening is I feel like they were trying to give us this, Malcolm and Martin type deal. And remember, this is before Malcolm and Martin really were on the scene. So I felt like it was a nod to that, letting you know, foreshadowing how this was going to go during the civil rights movement. Very different ways of attacking it, but still wanting to attack the same thing. So I felt like that. Also, you got to think about the fact that a lot of people talk about the Rosa Parks and the Montgomery boycott, but most people who know what they know really point to the Emmett Till death and how that shook the country as the true start to. I told you I was going to get you. It was a gnat, y'all, that was bothering me, and it was bothering me, so I had to get it. I'm sorry. Y'all know I have my antics in my videos. I'm sorry. Anyway, so Emmett Till's death was really what some people saw as the start to the civil rights era. And so I'm glad that they put this in there. Y'all remember, I kept saying in my other reviews, I want to see how they're going to tie in Emmett Till. I want to see how they're going to tie in Emmett Till. And we saw that throughout this episode. If you know anything about the funeral, it was like, they said it was the hottest day they could remember in Chicago. It was so hot. And people often talked about, you could literally smell his body 2 blocks away. Like you would be 2 blocks away from the church and you could literally smell the stench from his decaying body. Yeah, it was a lot. As you know, his mom, Mamie, left the body the way they shipped it to her, how she found it when they shipped it to her in that pine box and whatnot. You can actually go and look up her retelling of when she found the body, how the one part, and I'll move on from this, but the one part that gripped me the most about when she describes finding her son's body and trying to identify the body, because the only way they knew it was him was because of the ring that he had on. Otherwise, he was unrecognizable. But she talked about how when she looked on the side of his head, she could see the other side, see clear through his head. And immediately she thought maybe they shot him in the head. But she said when they kind of picked the head and the body up, there was it looked like they had taken an axe or a hatchet and cut through his skull where it was like open and you could see straight through it. Just undescribable. Sorry, I had to describe that, but that's what I always think about when I think about Emmett Till. Anyway, they're walking, and so there was this conversation that Montrose tried to have with Tick. Tick still ain't feeling Montrose since last episode when he found out for real that Montrose is gay, and so he kind of tries to ignore Montrose, gives Letty some water. Tick Letty gives takes some water from Tick. Montrose tried to give Letty some water as well. Letty Tick intervened, and so Montrose ends up giving it to Ruby. So they discussed whether or not they should bring Dee there, and Montrose so eloquently said, "Listen, that's her friend, and going to events like this is almost like a rite of passage for Black people at this time." And it was such a haunting notion that he said. I don't know. I just don't know. It just haunted me when he said that. And so we see that Dee is not handling this well. She's not handling this well. She started talking about what is the smell, and I told y'all how they described how you could smell the body like 2 blocks away, and she was like, "That's his body." You know, she's not dealing with this well. So anyway, in all of this discussion, Ruby, Tick, Montrose, Letty, Dee sneaks away, and then we got opening, credits or whatnot. Now, I've been making it a point to pay attention now to the opening credits ever since the episode 6, because they always give us a little snippet of something. In the backdrop of the opening credits, you see a silhouette, if you look real hard, of the 2 demon girls that we'll see later. And then we also, after they say Jigga Bobo, they had this little tie that tied. And I don't know, my mind immediately went to Emmett Till because I thought I saw a tie like that around him, but then when I looked and tried to find out if that was the tie, I never could find a picture with him that time. But the way the tie, it just, I don't know, it just went to Emmett Till for me. So I don't know. Did y'all see the same thing? Y'all let me know if y'all saw the same thing. Anyway, let's talk about this term Jigga Bobo. It's a combination of the word jigaboo and bobo. And so when I talk about jigaboo in this segment of this review, I will not be mentioning it again, and I'll tell you why now. Jigaboo is actually a term that comes from the Bantu, it's a Bantu term that means slave or servant. And when they brought Africans over during the slave trade, they started calling the slaves, the whites started calling slaves jigaboos, and even some of the Africans that knew Bantu would call each other, other Africans that were enslaved that, but it became a derogatory term, almost synonymous with the N-word. And so, and we know Bobo is the nickname for Emmett Till. So that's why I'm saying, because it was such a derogatory term and because of the nature of how it was used, I'm going to choose not to use that term anymore in this review. You'll always hear me talk about the 2 little girls as demon girls. All right. So we see Dee goes walking on the south side to the shops and so forth. All of the shops are closed, and they have signs on them on the front of the stores that says closed for Emmett. Now, we see while she's walking, 2 little girls run out of arcade or whatever. And the 2 girls, the light-skinned girls and the dark-skinned girls, these 2 girls later end up turning into the 2 demon girls. And at that moment, the 2 girls are laughing, playing, joking, and they're eating vanilla ice cream. I wish I had mentioned this, and I meant to, and I forgot. I always forget to mention something in my reviews. But if you remember, when Ruby first turned into a white woman, she went and got vanilla ice cream. Why is that significant? Because back in Jim Crow era, black people were not allowed to eat vanilla ice cream. They just weren't. That was a rule. Don't ask me why. That was one of the rules. There was a lot of things that blacks weren't allowed to consume. For example, in the South, you see a lot of black people love Pepsi, not so much Coca-Cola. That's because in the South, in a lot of areas, blacks weren't allowed to buy Coca-Cola. They were only allowed to buy Pepsi. Same things with little things like cigarettes. Blacks were not allowed to buy Marlboro. They had to buy Newports or maybe Kools, but they weren't allowed to buy Marlboros. And so you still see some of these lingering things from Jim Crow laws even today. So black people were allowed to buy ice cream like butter pecan, which back then was deemed a lesser ice cream. So that's why you see a lot of people love butter pecan ice cream. It's a whole big thing about that. You can go study and do research on that. Anyway, so listen, y'all, this is gonna be a long one. I'm telling you now, it's gonna be long. It's okay though. We're here for it. Anyway, we see Dee throws rocks at the girls and the girls go running away. And she screams at them and she says, "This is not funny. There's nothing funny. There's nothing to laugh about." So then we see Dee goes in the alley and police pull up. So it's Captain Lancaster and one of his police officers. And they corner her and they hold her down. And you see one of the officers takes a piece of chalk and the other officer puts these markings on each side of her on the ground with chalk. And so Dee looks up at this, just for some reason, looks up at this billboard or sign for cream of wheat there. And then the Captain Lancaster asks her about her mom. He asks her what's her mom's name, where her mom is, and he shows her the comic book that they picked up from the body of the dead cop back in Mayfield, and from last episode. And he was like, "Is this yours?" And she was like, "Yes." And then he proceeds to put a curse on or a spell on her. He says the spell, and you see on the ground immediately maggots form. The maggots start immediately turning into flies. Those flies immediately fly up and go into Dee's nose and mouth. And the cop also spit in his hand, Captain Lancaster. He spit in his hand and he wiped the spit all on her forehead. They let her go, and they drive off, and as she's trying to run away, if you go back and look at the sign or the billboard with the cream of wheat guy, his eyes move, and the eyes of the sign move and follow Dee as she tries to get away. Anyway, Letty goes home to see if Dee is there. Baby sitting down inside that good house is Gia in the corner, a mess. Baby, she asks if she needs a room, and Gia says, no, I'm looking for Atticus. Letty already know. Houston, we got a problem. Anyway, we then see Tick. Tick done went to the Braithwaite crypt to meet up with Christina. He done told Christina to meet him there. Now, they have this whole conversation, this, that, and the third, about, you know, us being related, you not being white enough, all of this mess. Anyway, long story short, he asks her to show him how to do the spell of protection over him. And in return, he'll give her the key that came out of the Ori. And so she agrees. He gives her the key. She gives him the how to, you know, cast a spell. She tells him everything he needs to know. As she's leaving, he mentions to her something about the autumnal equinox. Okay? Now, I think we're right around the time of the autumnal equinox, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, which we later find out is like 5 days away. So we know Tick went to the future. So Tick is asking her about that because obviously he found out something or saw something in the future that made him ask her about this autumnal equinox. And so that ends up coming out later. But he knows that she's going to use his body in order to cast this spell of immortality that she's trying to do. And he knows that from what he saw in the future. We'll get there later. So Montrose goes to Georgia Hippolyta's house looking for Dee. Dee is there, and she wants to know where her mom is. Where's my mom? She was like, my mom, if she found out Bobo died, she would have been here. Because remember, Dee's mom was friends with Bobo's mom, Mamie. And remember, I think that was the episode, I don't remember which episode, but remember when Bobo was there at the office with Dee, and they were like, we going over to Bobo's house, and Hippolyta told Bobo, said, tell your mama to call me. That told me that they were friends, you know, they were acquainted. Anyway, so she was like, my mama would have been here. And so he tried to keep up the lie, saying she's on a, you know, guide trip or whatever. She didn't believe it. She storms into the room. Now, when Montrose starts to talk to Dee about growing up and how him and George went through similar situations and how his best friend died, he goes into this monologue that he has with talking outside the door to that bathroom. I was so in love with the passion and with what Montrose was saying to her. He was telling her all about what it was to be black in America and how they're always going to try and steal stuff from you. And if they try and steal stuff from you, even though you know they might succeed, you don't make it easy for them. You fight to the death and you do not give it away. You do not make it easy for them. You make it hard for them. If they going to get it, baby, you ain't going to get away without some, you know, cuts, bruises, and scratches. I'm going to make it hard. And I love that he gave her this advice through the door of this bathroom. Now, it appeared like she wasn't paying attention. It seemed like she wasn't paying attention at all. And it seemed like she, you know, wasn't paying attention. But later on in this episode, we see more and more the things that he said to her were ringing true for her as she began to fight it. She didn't let go without a fight. So I love that they put that into the, because remember, she went in the bathroom, she turned up the radio, and she was acting like she wasn't hearing him. But I really feel like she was hearing him. And she was turning up the radio because she was, you know how sometimes you want to ignore somebody, you really hear them, but you do like that you trying to act like you're ignoring them, but really everything they're saying is really being received. So I felt like that here. You saw her trying to wash off the curse or the spit that the Captain Lancaster put on her, and she put on a baseball cap. Now, people have asked me, what is that baseball cap? The baseball cap is from the Chicago American Giants, which was a Negro League team in Chicago at that time. Now, ironically enough, the team, went defunct in 1956, which is a year after this. And also, if you know anything about that team, around the time that this would have been happening, this was one of the few, I don't know if it was the only one, but I know it was one of the few Negro League teams that at that time, when baseball started to get integrated, Major League Baseball started to get integrated, and some of the good players from the Negro League started to go over to Major League Baseball, some of the Negro League teams started to decline in how well they did. And some of the owners started to put white people on their teams and not just have a team totally filled with just black people. And it became a big thing. That's the Chicago American Giants. You can go look them up. So that's the baseball cap that she put on. She also put on some sneakers. And she she left out of the window and left. And Montrose comes in there and he sees she gone. Anyway, Ruby goes to Christina's house. While she dropped the keys trying to get into the house, and as she's picking up the keys, this white man asks her why she's there, what she's doing there. Is she the maid? She was like, hell no, I ain't a damn maid. And then that ends up being a confrontation, and you can see it's about to get ugly. Because the white man was like, what did you say to me? And you knew it was about to get ugly at that time. Oh, let me go back. Oh, I forgot to mention. We're going to go back. On when Dee was in the bathroom, she saw a book, and the book that she saw and picked out was Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin, if you know anything about Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin during the 1900s was the most popular book in America. The only book that outsold Uncle Tom's Cabin in the 1900s is the Bible. It is the only book that outsold Uncle Tom's Cabin. So it was a very popular book. We all know what the story is of Uncle Tom's Cabin, or what people believe the story to be of Uncle Tom's Cabin. On the front of Uncle Tom's Cabin is this caricature, and the two girls that Dee threw the rocks at earlier that was eating vanilla ice cream end up turning into the caricature on the front of Uncle Tom's Cabin that she watched. We'll get to that in a few moments. Anyway, so we had this confrontation in front of Christina's house. William conveniently, between Ruby and this white man, William conveniently comes to save the day. And, you know, they go in the house. He bathes Ruby. Ruby decides to take the potion, become the white lady, and her and William bang it out. And she climaxes as she's turning back into Ruby. This scene bothered me. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this scene. There's a lot of metaphor that I could go into, but I was so bothered by this scene, and it almost triggered me. I did not enjoy this scene at all. It really did something to me inside. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there's a lot of allegories and metaphors with that scene right there that I really don't want to go into because it really bothered me. Anyway, moving on. Tip goes home. He sees the shoes outside the door, and he immediately knows, oh, goddamn, that trick is it. He goes inside. Who's sitting at the table in silence? GR and Letty. Child, girl, child. Anyway, moving on. Diana is at the train station. She's at the train station. And then this is the first time we see the girls, the two demon girls, as the demon girls. Now, fun fact. One of the girls I learned is from my hometown of Miami. She's an excellent dancer. But both of the girls were picked because of their ability to dance and the things that they can do, contort, and do with their body. Now, from what I was reading, now y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but the things that I read about this episode was the fact that this wasn't CGI, what you saw the girls doing. This was not CGI. This wasn't computed. That was the girls literally doing all of that dancing and contorting and all of the things that they were able to do. Y'all know as black people, we're talented like that. Anyway, but one of the girls is from Miami. And I remember how I knew, I think it was the dark-skinned girl, because in one of the scenes when she's doing all of that, she gets on the ground. I think it was when they were later on with Dee's in the tunnel. She gets on the ground and starts breaking it down, twerking and doing all kinds of Miami dances on the ground. I was like, that's the Miami girl. Anyway, shouts out to her. So let's talk about these two caricatures now. We've seen iterations of these two characters with the braids and the barrettes and the big mouths, and big pink lips and so forth. If you go back and study words like Pickaninny and you look at the Pickaninny twins and stuff like that, you'll start to see those caricatures. And we know in the South that term was a very derogatory term that was used to describe not just the children of slaves, but the children of dark-skinned children or black children were always, that term was used to describe them well. There was also, they used the Pickaninny to put on posters, that caricature, to put on posters and things like that when they tried to, see, the white people are always trying to do things to turn, and I'm not disparaging all white people, but at that time, it was the white people that was doing it. They were doing things to try and take anything that black people did and make it negative. My point being, if you know anything about that Pickaninny or that caricature that you saw, they started putting it on posters with watermelons. And if you know the history of this country, when blacks first got freed, they one of the few things that they could do was farm. And when blacks did get farms and started to grow crops, one of the first crops that they grew was watermelon. And watermelon, because it was a fruit that not a lot of white farmers and sharecroppers wanted to grow, became one of the first wildly popular fruits to grow in by black farmers who have been recently freed. And so the watermelon became a symbol of freedom for black people. White people did not like that. So they began to make the watermelon this bad thing. They began to make watermelon this thing to be disparaged or picked at. And so that's where the whole watermelon stereotype came, where they started to say, oh, black people love to eat them a whole lot of watermelon, to make the watermelon seem like it wasn't a good fruit or it was bad to like watermelon. And that's all because black people had originally turned it into a symbol of freedom, and they didn't like that. Anyway, that's a little history, y'all. Y'all know I like to give y'all a little history. Anyway, y'all know white people love to bastardize things that we do. Anyway, so then let's go back to Letty's house. So we got this conversation between G.I., Tick, and Letty, okay? Now, at the train station, you saw Dee doing everything she could to try and get away from the two demon girls, and they were chasing her, you know, through the crowd, and she was trying to run through the crowd. She was afraid, and this was a horror episode where they were, you know, truly horrifying images. The way they could move and contort their bodies and things like that. Beautiful, but also horrifying. So back to Letty's house. You got Gia, Tick, and Letty. They're having this conversation. Letty tells them all about what the Kumiho is, and because Tick was like, you're a succubus, and she was like, no, I'm a Kumiho, and this, that, and the third. Anyway, Letty, the conversation, because I was with Tick, like, Letty don't got no answers for them. They asked Letty a question, not Letty, G.I. G.I. ain't got no answer. They asked G.I. a question, G.I. I don't know. What about this? I don't know. How do I die? I don't know. So, girl, why did you come all the way across the globe? Girl, you done brought your ass all the way across the goddamn globe and don't got no answers? Not one answer for nobody? Girl, Tick better have dick of death and cock of doom. You hear me? For you to travel across the globe for this little bitty conversation and you ain't got not one answer. And that's when Letty knows, she still love him. And Letty was mad. You could tell Letty figured that Letty was like, oh, she's still in love with him. Oh, y'all was in love. She was incensed and she was mad, baby. She stormed up the stairs. When she go upstairs, Tick go to G.I. says, that shit we had didn't mean nothing and you can get the fuck out. Anyway, Tick and Letty are go upstairs. Tick runs upstairs after Letty. They argue about everything. And Letty was like, Letty more so than Letty. And I think Letty was arguing with him about him not telling her about the Kumiho, only because Tick did tell her that there was somebody in Korea. He told her that there was somebody in Korea. He did not tell her that this person was a whole Kumiho monster with 9 tails and all of that. And Letty was like, why didn't you tell me? Because we got monsters that we see it up in Artem and all of these magic and everything. And you knew about magic and all of this stuff before we even got here. It might have been a good thing. And he was like, I just thought I was protecting you. And she lets it out. Listen, since you've been back, everybody done died but you. So who you protecting? I was like, ooh. Anyway, he tells her he done figured out the rest of the pages of he done figured out the language of Adam or whatever. And I figured it all out. And he went to Christina, and Christina done showed him how to cast a spell of protection. And she's mad with him. She was like, you gonna trust this bitch? You ain't even tell me about that. You still keep a secret. And we know in this show, secrets are not good. Well, in anything, secrets never always end up coming out. And the secrets are haunting everybody in this show. Montrose, George, Tick, Letty, everybody, Ruby, everybody got secrets. And it's haunting everybody. Anyway, they had this big blow up. So they mad with each other. Tick mad with her. She mad with Tick. This, that, and the third. And Tick stormed out. She told Tick, you can get on out. You can leave. And Tick takes his stuff and he leaves. Then we see Ruby and Christina at Christina's house after the sex. There was this whole conversation. The dialogue between these two bothered me. Ruby has this conversation with her about describing how Emmett Till died. About how she felt being a black person. About the pain that she felt and how she felt. Baby, Christina sat there on her high horse like, girl, I don't care. And I don't care about Emmett Till. I don't care about the 2 white men that killed him. I don't care about none of this. Then she went on to tell Ruby that I don't think you cared about it either. You just wanted to get basically saying you just wanted to get your rocks off and get what you wanted. Now, Ruby was still, the dialogue that Ruby had about Emmett Till is still the same dialogue that still exists today, that Black people have. Still the same pain. Still that we are tired of seeing this over and over and over again and being enraged and feeling just incensed with this country and how horrible this country is. So I was so enraged because the same way Christina said her white ass in her white privilege there and didn't give a shit and told her in so many words, I don't really care about everything. I don't care about none of this. That's how some white people, a lot of white people, many white people still feel today about what Black people are still experiencing today, which is why I was so mad and I was so incensed, because let me help you understand something. This goes for Christina the Ruby, and this goes for white people to us Black people today. You don't get to tell us how we feel or how you thought we feel or how you think we should feel. You cannot tell us how to feel. You don't get that privilege because you can't authentically experience that. I don't care what you do. You cannot feel what we feel because you can't be us. And even we'll get to the situation later on in the episode where Christina tried. It doesn't count. It's not the same. So you don't get to tell us when and if we can, how we feel or what to feel or how we should feel. You don't get to tell us that. There's no way, shape, form, or fashion I would sit there and let this white woman tell me how I feel or what she thought I was feeling or try to explain to me my feelings. You know, you don't get to do that because you won't feel, you will never feel what I'm feeling. You can't. Anyway, I was real upset. On my on the live, I did a couple, like I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, I asked you all, my subscribers, the people who watch me, to tell me what this scene did for you. This is the scene that I'm talking about. So put in the comments how this scene between Ruby and Christina made you feel. What are your thoughts? Let's move on, because I know I'm already long and I still got like 12 pages of notes, God. Anyway, after that, we had this cutaway to these three white girls playing jump rope, and I thought I had been morphed into that scene from Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. Remember Nightmare on Elm Street? The 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. You see the three white girls jumping rope in this little white neighborhood. I felt like that's what I was watching. Anyway, Dee goes to Letty's house. She sees the demon girls, right? And so Letty, but before that, Dee tried to tell Letty about the cops and what had happened, and all of a sudden she couldn't talk. And so Letty was like, you okay? And she couldn't talk. So then Letty goes away. I forgot where Letty went, but Letty left. Dee went around to the back and saw Woody and went into the car. And she was looking at something in the back seat. But then the two demon girls came and they scared the shit out of her. And she got on her bike and she rode off. Anyway, Tick goes over to Jordan Hippolytus' house with all his clothes and stuff because he done got kicked out of Letty's house. Montrose sitting outside on the curb. So they finally have this conversation. They haven't been able to talk since last episode. They finally have this conversation where they talk about Montrose and him being gay and so forth, and him being married to his mom. And he said, no, because Tick said, did you cheat on my mama? And he was like, no, I never cheated on her. I never acted on any of my feelings until after your mom was passed. And then he goes into this conversation letting him know, and this is why I talked about this during the last episode where we were trying to look at this through 2020 eyes, not looking at it through the eyes of 1955. Because Montrose had to school his son and say, hey, you don't understand what they're doing to gay people out there. At the time, remember, being gay was not just illegal, but it was seen as a mental illness, and they locked people in insane asylums that did experiments on their brains. And Montrose talked about how his pastor had a situation where somebody found out that, you know, he had a homosexual experience, and they came on Palm Sunday and snatched him out of the pulpit, sent him to an insane asylum, and took out half his brain for science. Right out the pulpit. And he was like, I didn't want that. And so, yes, maybe the love that me and your mama had wasn't the love that, or an erogenous love, but it was a familial love. And familial loves, I was with Montrose, do tend to be stronger than erogenous love. Even though people do crazy things for erogenous love, but familial love is long lasting. Anyway, so there was that whole conversation. Tick talks to him about how and about what he saw in the portal, about the fact that he knows that Letty is pregnant. He also tells him about the book that he found, and that the book is called Lovecraft Country. And he says, and it has George Freeman on the top, and he says, that's my son. And so we find out Tick named his son George Freeman, which leads us to believe he's going to find out that George was really his dad. Anyway, and how the book is all about their family history, and Tick read the book. So So he says, I know that he's pregnant, but she just hasn't told me yet. So he knows that. He also talked about how the characters in the book, some of them had different sexes, and talks about Dee's having a son named Horace. And I know some of that name Horace is from the actual Lovecraft novel that you can read. I have not read the novel yet, I will be honest, because I'm going to read the novel after I finish this first season. Anyway, but I know that name Horace is in the novel. And so they have that conversation. We then see Letty at the church. She's praying because she's asking God to protect Tick. Christina comes. Letty done asked Christina to come. Christina came, and she talks to Letty, and Letty said, listen, I need you to put a spell of invulnerability on Tick, and if you do that, I have the negatives of the pictures I took of the pages from Titus's pages out the Book of Names. And so she was like, I ain't gonna do it. I'll do it on you, but I ain't gonna do it on no Tick. And so Letty was like, that's all right. But then Christina gets up to leave. Letty says, wait, you know what? I'll do it. So she gives her the little the negatives from the pages, and Christina puts the spell on Letty. And then we see on Letty's stomach the brand that, remember I told you I saw that brand on William's chest? The brand is actually on Letty's stomach now, and it's the mark of Cain or whatnot. So I thought that was real interesting. Anyway, so now we know that Letty is invulnerable. That's going to become important later. Tick and Montrose are still at the house, okay? Tick and Montrose are talking about, more about what Tick saw in the future, this, that, and the third. He tells Montrose that he gave Christina the key, and Christina in turn taught him how to do the spell of protection and so forth. And he was like, but don't worry, Christina can't use it because the machine is broken. Now, y'all know as well as I know, Christina gonna find a way to get that machine to work. Okay, this is Christina we're talking about. Anyway, he also tells him about some lady in a hood. When he went into the future, he said, I was only there for a couple of seconds. This lady that was in a hood, she had a robotic arm. She shoved the book in my hand and pushed me back through the portal. We gonna I really want to know who this lady was. And this book, I think, told Tick a lot more that he's not saying. We'll get there. Anyway, Tick, does tell his father that he read the book, and that's how he finds out that he dies because Christina used his body to cast a spell of immortality, and she did it on the autumnal equinox, and that's why he asked Christina about that. And so Montrose goes into this whole thing about, nope, I always thought I was going to die at the hand of a white man's bullet or being lynched, but I ain't going to do that. If I have to, I would die protecting you and my grandson. And so if you got to end up taking a life or a body that gets sacrificed, I'll be that sacrifice. And so they get ready to go do this spell. Dee goes to the police station and confronts Captain Lancaster and the other policeman and goes off for the old, new, past, present. Where's my mama? Is my mama dead? This, that, and the third. And don't disrespect my mama name, because it ain't no crazy black name. It is a Greek name, you stupid bitch. She cussed him out, called him all kinds of names. Captain Lancaster asked her about the Ori. He said, listen, I could take the curse off you, but you got to bring me the Ori. Baby, she tells him, fuck you, spits on him, and storms out. The other guy tried to go after him. Captain Lancaster was like, don't worry about it. She's already dead anyway. You ain't even got to worry about her. While she's storming out, and this is where I feel like she goes into that mode that Montrose was talking about when he was talking to her outside the bathroom about, if they're going to take something from you, don't let them have it easy. You don't go down without a fight. And so what you hear in the background, because they're good for giving us a good spoken word. What do we hear in the background? In the background is, ooh, y'all know what I'm looking outside the window at. Hot dad. Ooh, you walking the kids again. Hot dad. Anyway, there's a hot dad that always, walks by. He's walking. Anyway, y'all know I get so distracted. So in the background, the spoken word is Naomi Wadler giving her iconic speech in 2018 when they had the March for Our Lives after the Parkland shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School, and they had the whole march in Washington or whatever. Naomi Watler is a black girl who spoke, and she gave this touching speech all about how black girls and black women, their stories aren't often told, and they, you know, get lost in the shuffle. And she's talking all about that, and it was great parallel with what was going on. You know, they always do a good job of that with this show. Anyway, Naomi Watler is the young lady's name. You can go back and look up her speech. Wadler is her last name. I know somebody's going to want to know. Anyway, we then see Tick and Montrose. I'm sorry. Before we get to Tick and Montrose, the two demon girls, when D goes to get on the bike and ride away, the two demon girls, they come, and now they're really after her. And, you know, D gets, you know, her gumption underneath her, and she just screams at them, and she like, you know what, you know, she just screams, and you know they're trying to get out there, and she just riding away. So then we go back to George Hippolyta's house, where Tick and Montrose are casting a spell. So they do all of the put all of this blood down, and they, you know, get ready to cast a spell. And we learned that Montrose is dyslexic, and Tick is like, any other secrets you want to tell me that I don't know about? Anyway, and we also learned that that they have figured out the whole spell. They do the spell. Tick is sitting in the middle of the little thing that they made. Montrose is speaking the words in the language of Adam, this, that, and the third. And Montrose at the end was like, amen. Anyway, that's funny. But Tick doesn't feel anything. He doesn't see anything. Nothing happened. Nothing moved. And they both ask each other, you feel anything? You see anything? And so they think the spell doesn't work. We later find out the spell does work. Christina then pays a visit to pays two white men to help her reenact the death of Emmett Till. They beat her down. She says a little prayer, whatever, spell or whatever. They say they beat her down. They put the cotton gin fan around her neck with barbed wire. They shoot her and they throw her in the lake. I wasn't here for it. It was a nice try, Christina, but I wasn't here for it. Especially the way that I thought she was crying at first, and then it sounded like a diabolical laugh at the end. I wasn't here for it. And there's nothing you could do. I don't care how you try to experience it. Baby, you immediately came back to life. You weren't snatched away from your family in fear for your safety. You knew what was about to happen to you, whereas this little boy did not. You weren't beat all night long like that little boy was. I wasn't here for it. I wasn't here for it. At Letty's house, her and Ruby have this conversation. She's, you know, Lady is doing her thing with her pictures, and she's talking about how, you know, all of that went on at this funeral, and I couldn't even take a picture of the boy's body. And, you know, Ruby is like, you know what, you did what you could. And I like how they made it a point. They never showed you Emmett Till's body. And if you know the story of Emmett Till, that's the biggest part of Emmett Till and his story. Well, not the biggest part, but that's one of the things that people always center around it. The actual image, you actually get to see this mutilated body. And they didn't show you that. They never showed you that. They didn't even show you inside the church during the funeral to see the casket. And so I thought that was their way of not trying to glorify this mutilated body. They didn't show you that at all. And that part I liked. I like that, you know what happened, but they never let you see that body. Letty tells Ruby that she's pregnant. Ruby then tells Letty all about her relationship with Christina William and about the potion and becoming a white woman. And she said, listen, I'm trying to create my own space because I don't feel comfortable being the white woman. I don't all the time feel comfortable with you black people. And I just need my own space that I can create. And that's what I'm trying to do. And Christina gonna help me do it with her magic. And Letty is like, girl, you can't trust that woman. Even though, Letty, you trust her to give you this invulnerability spell. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, Dee goes to George's garage. She begins to lock herself in, and the demon girls are after her. We then see Captain Lancaster that came with the entire police force down to Letty's house, okay? He said they got, you know, a warrant or something to get in there because they were told that it was some Muslim radicals. There's some bullshit about Muslim radicals trying to, you know, do stuff to white people because of Emmett Till's death or whatever. And so one of the cops goes in immediately, and when Captain Lancaster tries to come in, bloop, the force field. He can't get in. He sees the little blood markers on the door, and he knows, like, Christina, oh, I can't get in. Y'all got protection, so let's go. So him and the police officers, they leave. The other police officer comes out of the house. They go outside immediately. And remember, I told you, it looked like the whole police force was outside. Baby, all the police officers started firing up the house. They started shooting at the house. I mean, a barrage of bullets were coming through the house. It was a mess. It was a mess. Back down to George's garage. Dee is in there. She done figured out remember, she can't talk if she's trying to talk about Captain Lancaster or any of their dealings. So she done figured out I can't talk about it, but we all know she's a great artist, so she can draw it. So she starts to draw pictures of what's happening between her and Lancaster, since she can't talk about it. She can show you it. Anyway, so she done figured that out. The demon girls come, and baby D picks up this big metal thing, wrench or whatever, and starts beating them down, honey. Of course it doesn't face them because they're demons and they just pop back up and stuff like that. So she's fighting. Back down to Letty's house. All these bullets are coming through. And at that moment, Letty figures out, bitch, I'm invulnerable. And so she starts to get up. Ruby's yelling at her, Letty, get down. Baby, Letty gets up. And you start to see whenever a bullet come to her, it's like a little force field. And it would, bounce off the little force field or whatever. So she knows the invulnerability spell worked. Back down to the garage. Montrose goes down to the garage. And he sees Dee in there violently swinging and fighting with the air. And he, is trying to help her and so forth. And he grabs her. And she's like, let me go. He can't see him, but she can. She feels it. And then you see something happens to her arm. I just had a thought. I immediately popped in my head. Now, because her arm started bleeding because the demon started scratching her arm. But couldn't that be Dee who Tick saw in the when he went to the future? Because he said it was a robotic arm, and maybe something happened. Maybe they have to cut the arm out because her arm got messed up in real life. Even though Montrose couldn't see what was going on, he could see her arm get messed up. So maybe she ends up having to get a robotic arm, and that is who the lady in the hood that gave that gave Tick the book and pushed him through the portal. And maybe she had on the hood because she didn't want Tick to see that it was her. Because Tick would have figured out, he would have looked at her and said, oh, that's Dee. I'm just thinking out loud. Anyway, y'all know I had these thoughts. Anyway, down to Letty's house. Tick is going down to Letty's house, I guess, to go apologize. He hears gunshots, runs to the house, sees all the police. The police now look at Tick and turn their guns. They have hands in the air. He puts his hands in the air. Y'all know how these things go. You don't care how much you submit. They just want to kill us. So, of course, one of the officers fires at Tick. As the bullet is going towards Tick, what jumps through the streets? One of the monsters, the Shoggoth monsters that we saw from episodes 1 and 2, jumps through the streets, and the bullet goes into the monster, and the monster absorbs the bullet. And the monster goes and starts killing all the cops. He's killing the cops. He even kills Captain Lancaster. All of the cops died. The monster is throwing, police cars everywhere, throwing men everywhere, just killing them all. And so Tick is protected. He goes to grab the Letty. So after all is said and done, the monster runs up to Tick and yells. But then the monster, Tick puts out his hand and puts his hands on the monster's head. The monster, is calm. And so Letty was like, I guess the spell worked. And it kind of goes off from there. And that's the end of the episode, y'all. If I'm being honest, this was not my favorite episode. I didn't like the episode. I was triggered doing a lot of this episode. I did not enjoy the episode. There were a lot of parts of this episode that were uncomfortable for me that I just did not enjoy. And I know that's a part of life. Sometimes you do have to be triggered or made uncomfortable. There were a lot of episodes, especially, just about every scene with Christina angered me. And I talked about that. Y'all let me know how y'all feel. A lot of people I've talked to have said they loved this episode. I really did not enjoy the episode. I'm not saying it wasn't a great episode, and it's a phenomenal show, and it's a great episode, but I just did not enjoy it because of the reasons that I talked about. Anyway, I hope y'all like this. That's all I got for y'all. Until next time, thank y'all for coming. Y'all drive safely. I'm out.